Okay, we will start with the objectives for the Chaos-specific Grand Alliance. And first up is a Search Hybrid, all to real. This is scored when a friendly fighter's upgrade attack action takes the target out of action, or a friendly fighter's successful illusion attack action. So the first condition requires you to actually kill someone, which I'm not a fan of, generally speaking. So the second condition only requires you to make a successful illusion attack action. So I would probably take this for the second condition if I were to take it. I would probably not take it, but if you are a fan of illusion upgrades, you would probably need to stack your deck with at least 2 or 3 of those to have a reasonable chance of scoring this one. I would probably rate this C. I could see this being used possibly in a Garruk's Reverse type warband where you actually want to upgrade your fights with decent attacks, where you have at least 2-3 of the fighters with the fairly crappy attacks to get go. To give them some illusion upgrades, yeah, in that specific circumstance I could see it being used, but in most of the other warbands, which are more elite focused, I probably won't take it. So yeah, maybe rate this a C, possibly a B for Garruk's Reavers. Okay, next up is a end phase dual Path of Chaos. Score this in an end phase if 3 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory and 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action. So pretty hard to fulfill both of those conditions, actually. For 2 glory, that's a rough one. I would probably need 3 glory for that one to be tempted to play it. This is a really hard objective. 3 or more friendly fights in enemy territory for a Chaos Warband. Okay, for Squitch maybe doable. In the card art here is actually Guardsworn Hunt. Those fighters won't survive in enemy territory, so that's just not an option to play it there. 3 or more friendly fights in enemy territory for a Chaos Warband. Oof. No, yeah, this is not good. This is a D or possibly even an E, if E is the lowest. I wouldn't take this. Okay, last of the Chaos Grand Alliance objectives are Pawns of the Gods. It's also dual. Scores in end phase if 1 or more fighters in each warband are inspired. Okay, easily enough. A bit dependent on a matchup, and 1 or more fighters in each warband are out of action. I mean, both of those conditions are fairly easy to score, which kind of lures you into thinking that they should be easy together. I've tried to take this objective a couple of times, and I don't think it's worth it for 1 glory, because it's gonna swing and miss more than it will hit, actually. So, it's probably easier to score than Path of Chaos, but I'm gonna give it a D. I would give it a C if it were for 2 glory, yeah. Okay, moving on to the Chaos Grand Alliance Gambits. First up is Chaotic Paths. Choose 1 enemy fighter with no move or charge token. The chosen fighter player picks 1. Deal 1 damage to that fighter, or you scatter 3 from that fighter's hex and push that fighter along the chain to the end hex. If the chain is interrupted, or if the fighter would be pushed into a hex that is blocked or occupied, do not push them any further. So, yeah, no. The Dread Pageants have a similar card where you actually let your opponent choose the condition, and those type cards are generally not that good because, yeah, the opponent will just choose the lesser of 2 evils and won't suffer much from it. There are better ploys to apply crappy conditions on enemy fighters. So, yeah, in various specific circumstances this could be good. If there is a dangerous fighter with 1 wound left or something like that, and you want to avoid him from just free swinging at you, yeah, maybe, no. But the fact that the fighter you choose cannot have move or charge token makes it even worse. So, I would not use this. I've actually tried to use it once and it did nothing for me, so I would rate this D at best. Second gambit for the Chaos Grand Alliance is Desperate Bargain, which is actually a reaction. Play this when a friendly fighter is dealt damage after the out of action check. If that fighter is now vulnerable, give that fighter 1 upgrade from your hand or 1 illusion upgrade from your discard pile. Just no, this is not a good card. You are depending on your enemy leaving you at 1 wound left. That's, I mean, of course it will happen sometimes, but actually using a card slot for that to happen just so you can play an upgrade, no. It's a very crappy card. This is possibly the worst of them all, so I would probably rate this E. Okay, next up is a spell. Agonizing Bolt. It's a gambit spell requiring 1 swirly to cast. If cast, choose 1 enemy fighter within 3 hexes of the caster or within 4 hexes of the caster if the caster is a siege fighter, which is basically Vortemis. So far we only have 1 siege caster in the game. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter or 2 damage if the caster suffered backlash. So the backlash is really nothing major, no major boost to this card, but yeah, dealing 1 damage on an easily cast spell is welcome. There are not many spells like this in the game, so if you are spell focused you would probably take this one, especially if you're relying on casting spells for scoring search or end phase objectives. I like it. Probably best so far here. I'm gonna give it a B. Okay, moving on to the upgrades, and first up is Devoted Curse. So it's an upgrade which is actually a reaction, so you have to first pay for it and then you can use the reaction, which is reaction. After this fighter's activation, put 1 devotion token on a feature token within 2 hexes of this fighter. So you can activate the fighter, you basically charge, guard, move, attack, whatever. And after you can use this reaction to place a devotion token on a feature token within 2 hexes. So a gloom or a objective basically. While a feature token has 1 or more of these devotion tokens, the hex containing that feature token is a lethal hex in addition to its other types. Remove all devotion tokens from the battlefield at the end of the round. This is utter crap. So that you would actually pay glory to have the possibility to make a feature token into a lethal hex fairly close to yourself. No, it's not good. This is a E. Okay, moving on. Next up is Gifted Bulk. Yeah, it has a mutation keyword, which really doesn't do anything at the moment. I might be mistaken there, but yeah, it might have some extra benefits or downsides later on. Okay, so it's just a +1 wound, basically, with the added benefit that you can give this upgrade to a friendly fighter for free if you take someone out of action, but then you have to place it on that specific fighter. So, yeah, it's for all intents and purposes better than Great Fortitude. It's basically Great Fortitude with some extra added benefit. So yeah, very good. Great Fortitude is in of itself a great card, so I'll give this an A. Why not? Okay, last up of the Chaos Grand Alliance cards is the Illusion Upgrade Phantom Pain. So illusion upgrades work in the following way. Do not spend any glory points when you play it. At the end of the action phase it goes away, or when this fighter is chosen by Gambit. So even a sidestep will break the card. Something to consider. Or if the fighter is dealt damage. So the effect of the card is -1 defense and +1 range to range 3+ attack actions. So I think it's a pretty weak bonus actually. An extra range is, yeah, it's fine, but it's not that decisive. It's too small of an effect to use up a card slot, even if it's an illusion. I think it's at best worth a C. Okay, moving on to the other side with the Death Alliance cards. First up is a Search Coup de Grace. Scores immediately after an attack that took an enemy fighter out of action if that fighter had 1 or more wound counters in the Declare attack action step. Okay, so you need your opponent to be wounded before you kill them. Yeah, it's gonna happen, but it's not a good card because it's a taking out of action card, and those aren't great. And I'll also expand on my thoughts on why I don't like taking out of action search cards. I think search cards should be fairly easily scored, and yeah, taking out of action could be easily scored, but it's too dependent on who you're meeting. If you're meeting Morgok, taking someone out of action in the first round will be very hard. If you're meeting a very defensive team, it might be very hard. But of course, you can also end up in a matchup where you kill 3 fighters in the first round, so you never know, but I think it's too much of an uncertainty factor to take those cards if you don't really have to. And with that said, I will give this a C. Okay, moving on. Next we have another search card, Death Champion, and it's also a taking out of action search card. Scored is immediately after leader's attack action that took the target out of action. So less specific with the conditions, but it has to be your leader. I think the only real contenders for this card is Kanan and possibly Drepper, and I don't like these type of cards, as I've already said, and it's just another Savage Exemplar, so a bit dull of a card, but yeah, for those 2 specific fighters it can be decent. If you want to go the boring Voltron way, not to be judgmental, but it's not the most fun way to play the game, I guess. So yeah, I don't really know what to say. It's a C for me, possibly B if you want to go Voltron heavy. Okay, next up is a dual end phase, Lurking Death. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more friendly fights are each in a cover hex, and 1 or more of those fighters are in enemy territory. After you score this card, pick 1 opponent. That opponent's warband deals 1 damage to 1 fighter from your warband that is in a cover hex. So first of all, you need to play it on a warband that has expendable fighters. I don't like to give out free damage to my fighters if I have 4 or less fighters, so I wouldn't put it in Dreppers or Lady Harrows. But in Grimwatch or in Lady Briarthorns or possibly Sepulchral Guard, this is fairly doable, and 2 glory is a good amount of glory for this fairly easy objective. With some tools to help you, like Reborn in Darkness and Shadowlure, Symbiote's Call, etc. This is easy enough to set up. I would give this a solid B. Alright, moving over to the ploys. Starting off strong here with Partial Resurrection. Place 1 friendly fighter that is out of action on a starting X in your territory. Give that fighter 1 race token. Then give that fighter wound counters until that fighter is vulnerable. So yeah, it's a very strong card obviously. So it has the downside that your fighter coming back will be just coming back with 1 wound left, and you can't play it on your leader because you need your leader live to play it, which is the restricted crown symbol in the bottom center field here. So obviously very strong card, since you can actually play it on the non-leader Vamps, you can play it on the non-leader Drepper Wraith Creepers, you can play it on the non-leader Lady Harrows, you can play it on Varklav, you can play it on Kenta. Several really strong fighters that can benefit from this. This is a clear A, and I would be surprised if this won't be restricted in the next far list. Alright, moving on with the ploys. Reborn in Darkness. Reaction. Play this after you give a friendly fighter a race token. Place that fighter in a cover X. So yeah, obviously it has synergy with Partial Resurrection, but to take it for that synergy, which is just 1 card, is not great card building in my opinion. So the only faction in the Death Alliance here benefiting from this is Sepulchral Guard, and I would definitely take it in Sepulchral Guard warband. This is a good boost to their minuscule move, and you want to get onto objectives most of the time with them anyway, so it's a clear take in that warband. For anyone else it's not that great. So I'm just going to judge it from a Sepulchral Guard's standpoint, because it's obviously just tailored towards them. So for them, I think it's an A. For everyone else, it's not really a card you play. Alright, moving along with the ploys. Swooping Shadow. The first attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation step has Ensnare. If that fighter is flying or a hunter, that attack action also has Cleave. Okay, so that's pretty much a large portion of the Death faction. Grimwatch is filled with hunters, The vamps are all hunters, and lots of the other guys are flying. So Cane Reapers is on the short end here, but it's not a great card anyway. Cleave and Ensnare is fine and all, but it does nothing if your opponent rolls a crit. So you are just much better off with a plus dice card like Determined Effort if you're looking for extra accuracy. So I wouldn't take this. It sounds good on paper, but it really isn't. So I'm gonna give this a D. I mean, it's borderline C because we've seen much worse cards here, but I'm gonna stick with the D. Okay, moving over to the upgrades. First up is Shade Leech. Reaction after an attack action: if this fighter was a target and is in a cover X, heal 1 this fighter. Okay, let's think about this for a moment. So you can heal both if your opponent misses you or if he hits you, which is the upside of this card, but everything else is just crap. So you're banking on your opponent to miss you or do little enough damage so that you would actually survive to be able to heal 1. I mean, you're very lucky if you can get the heal off 2 times in a match after you play this. And why not just play a +1 wound card? It's beyond me. It's a very weird card, and I don't see this being played ever. And you have to be in a cover X as well, so yeah, no. Clear pass, and this is a E. Just take a +1 wound or an infection damage reduction card. Or Haughty Resistance for that matter is just better, if you're fine with using up a restricted slot. Life Seeker. Range 1 attack actions on this fighter's fighter card. That's really hard to say. Have Cleave. If this fighter is an assassin, range 1 attack actions on this fighter's fighter card. Oh my god, they put it one more time for me here. Also have Ensnare. Dark Enchantment. Guide this warrior's hand. Okay, this is not great because we already have Sherry Claws in the meta. It's Dire Chasm, so of course it will rotate out sooner or later, but at the moment, Sherry Claws is cleave for range 1 and 2, and if you're a hunter, it's cleave for any range. So that's just better. The Ensnare, I would never pay upgrade to get Ensnare, because Ensnare is just 1 symbol on the die. And so this card is only for range 1 as well, so it's very limited. It's not a good card. It's okay, I'll be kind, I'll give this a D. There are worse things out there than cleave, I guess. Alright, wrapping up the Grand Alliance cards for death is Fatal Scheme. Action, spend 1 glory point. When you do, drop 2 power cards, then discard 2 power cards. This fighter can only make this action once per round, and it's restricted to leaders as well, as you can see in the bottom center field there with the crown symbol. So you have to spend 1 glory. So first you have to spend 1 glory to actually pay for the upgrade, and then you have to spend 1 glory to do the action, to draw 2 power cards and then discard 2 power cards, and you can only do it once per round. I failed to see how this is good. Maybe I'm missing some synergy here, but I guess you could use it to score Silver Lining if you want to have 4 upgrades on your hand and you really can't score glory in any other way, but otherwise willingly discarding ploys to score Silver Lining, I don't know. Or if you're fishing for a very specific card that's very necessary for you to win, I guess, but yeah, it's a very limited kind of play that you're looking for there, and you have to have it on your leader, so your leader can't be doing other actions that activation. I would not take this card ever, unless I play some meme deck. This is a E. Alright, moving over to the destructive side of things, starting off with the More the Meaner. Search, score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action, if that fighter had 2 or more supporting fighters. Alright, this is the good thing about this is that you don't have to succeed with the attack. You have to just make an attack with 2 or more supporting fighters, or something that counts as 2 more supporting fighters, mind you. So for example, the 2 minions in the Cunning Crew both count as 2 supporting fighters, so just make an attack with one of them supporting and you're good to go. Torque a Tough Skull in that warband also counts as supporting fighter from 2 hexes away, so it's very easy to set up with that warband. And they actually have a copy of this exact objective in their own deck as well. So for them, it's an A. It's just good to take both of them, and I've reliably scored it in every game I've played with them. And I'm not sure how good it works for other destruction warbands, but I can see it being used for Gits, for example, very reliably. So for those two warbands, and especially for the Cunning Crew, I would say it's an A. For Gits, probably a B. And for everyone else, probably not reliable enough to see play. Alright, next up is Easy Come, Easy Go. Score this in an end phase if you have no power cards in your hand. 1 glory. Alright, I'm not a huge fan of this. I don't think it's easy enough to score for 1 glory. And I also think it's a bit dull design-wise, but we'll put that aside. So I'll give my opinion on why I don't think it's that easy to score. You might be short on glory to not play your upgrades you need to play before scoring this. Or you might not fulfill the conditions for the ploys you want to play. And that aside, you might be forced into playing upgrades or ploys on fighters not getting the full benefit of them just to score this 1 glory. So I wouldn't take this. I mean, it's not really super hard to score, but I'll give this a D just for the fact that it might force your hand. Otherwise, I'm leaning on a C. Alright, next up is Scanned Rewards. Hybrid, score this in an end phase if there are no feature tokens in your territory and in no one's territory. Or there are no objective tokens on the battlefield. Alright, so no feature tokens in your territory and in no one's territory. That means no gloom or flippable gloom. I think this is too much out of your control to play. If the condition were actually there are no objective tokens in your territory and in no one's territory, it still would have been fairly hard because you can't fully control what your enemy will do. But then it would have been kind of playable. Now it's too situational to play even for 2 glory. I'm gonna give this a D. I guess if you still want to invest in this objective, which I think is maybe not the best choice since it's only 2 glory, you might want to invest in some token flipping ploys and possibly something like the Geomancer's gauntlets as well. Then you might have a shot at this, but I still don't think it's worth it. Alright, next up is Visage of Destruction. So it's an illusion upgrade, both a benefit and a curse, because it's free. But on the other side, a simple side step breaks it, or ping damage, or anything like that, and it ends at the end of a round. And it's restricted to leaders as well. This fighter is a hunter, and I don't think that's a huge benefit, really. So -1 dice from adjacent enemy fighters attack actions that target this fighter to a minimum 1. I mean, it's very dependent on matchup. So if you know what you're facing, yeah, it's probably good. Pairing up against Morgox, a bunch of really great range 1 fighters, it's strong, obviously. But, I mean, if you end up fighting Drippers, it's completely useless. So, and the fact that it's restricted to leaders, I'm not a huge fan. Still, -1 dice can still be, in the right circumstance, a great boon. So I'm gonna give it C, because it's not the worst of the bunch, but it's not that great either. It's easy enough to stack up dice these days, so -1 dice won't do a huge deal anyway, so yeah, C. Alright, moving over to Troggoth's Blood. Give this only to a fighter with a wound characteristic of 4 or less. This fighter is a hunter. Reaction of this fighter is given an upgrade. Heal 1 this fighter. Okay, yeah. So when I read this card initially, I thought, oh my god, another useless reaction that won't do anything. But I mean, I think it's... this card is perfect for actual 4 wound fighters, of course. I think playing this on a 3 wound fighters is kind of crap because they're still in 1-shot territory. But say you have a fighter you really need to stay alive, someone important, an Inspired Toothdraga. You really want him to live. So you play this upgrade on him and use the reaction to heal him for 1. He was down to his last 2 wounds. Now he's back up to 3. Then you play Great Strength on him, so it's now 4 for 4. And then maybe a Scavenged Armor. Might not be an unthinkable scenario to have these 3 upgrades on your hand. And now he's back up to 5, or rather, he's buffed up to 5 from being on his last 2 wounds. And it's now taken well away from 1-shot territory. I mean, depending on who you're meeting, of course. But I think this actually could be really fun to try out. I mean, this is obviously just me rambling, but I will give this one a B because I think it actually can see play. in the right circumstance. And I'm actually dying to try this one out myself. Right, next up is Spite Maul. It's an attack action upgrade, 1 range, 3 hammers, 1 damage. If this fighter's minion, this upgrade has the following reaction. Reaction, after this attack action, if it succeeded, pick one of the target's upgrade, break that card. Okay, so yeah, there is a very similar card in the Essential Card Pack. It's called Swordbreaker. It has the same accuracy profile, but 1 extra damage. And has a similar reaction, but requires you to score a critical hit, but does not require you to be a minion. So I think those two kind of even out, and this is worse base damage. So yeah, I think just pick Swordbreaker if you want an attack action upgrade that's in this same ballpark. So yeah, I think this won't see much play unless cards show up that requires minions to kill stuff or something like that. So yeah, I wouldn't pick this card. I'm being kind, and I'll give this a D. Moving along with the ploys, Stupefy, getting strong Harry Potter vibes here. Stupefy. Okay, deal 1 damage to 1 enemy fighter with 1 or more illusion upgrades adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters, or stagger 1 enemy fighter adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters. So I think you would play this for the second condition, because relying on that your opponents will have illusion upgrades and being adjacent to you is kind of far-fetched. I mean, it's nice when it happens, I guess, if you can ping them to death, but you play this for the second condition for sure. Staggering 1 enemy fighter adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters is quite strong, actually. If you play this at the start of the round, you get a reroll against that fighter for the rest of the round. And if that is the particular fighter you want to kill, that can be quite good. Rerolls are strong, so you can use rerolls to get extra accuracy, and you can use rerolls to score Branching Fate and unequal contests. So yeah, I would probably run this. Just be mindful that simple guard breaks the stagger, but most of the time the enemy would have to waste an activation to get rid of the stagger then. So I think even in that case you've won something. So I'm gonna give this a B. Alright, moving along with the ploys. Shattering Blow. Reaction. Play this after friendly fighter's successful range 1 attack action. Pick one of the target's upgrades and break that card. There is already a similar card from Diachasm. Okay, so pick one of the target's upgrades and break that card. I mean, I've considered these types of cards many times, and they're not bad. I've just always found better cards to fill my ploy resources with. So, I mean, they're fine and all, and they can be tremendously powerful in the right circumstances. I just think there are better cards. I can totally see how you would want to play it, but I personally wouldn't. So I'm gonna give it the C. Alright, last of the cards for the Destruction Grand Alliance is Tremendous War. It's a ploy. Choose 1 friendly fighter. If the chosen friendly fighter is a wizard, stagger each enemy fighter adjacent to the chosen fighter. Otherwise, roll 1 magic dice for each enemy fighter adjacent to the chosen fighter. On roll of channel, stagger that enemy fighter. So, rolling dice to stagger, I don't think that's reliable enough, so that we're just going to get that out of the way. So, if you're going to play this card, you need a wizard in your team. And this is Destruction Grand Alliance, so you have 2 of them. You have Sarbag and you have Headcracker. And I think only Headcracker is the valid play for this card. And I don't think it's a good enough option to play it anyway, because that's just 1 fighter and you're relying on him to be in the opponent's face just to put a stagger token on them. So I don't think this is good enough. If this was for the Vamps or for a Storm-Size Cursebreaker, I think this could be really good. But as it stands, I would never play this. And playing it for the 50-50 to stagger each fighter, no. I'm gonna give this an E. It's too situational and not reliable enough. Right, let's move over to order. Starting off with Path of Order. Duel scores in an end phase if your warband holds 2 or more objectives and 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Okay, so very similar to Path to Victory, or yeah, even the name. So an important difference is that Path to Victory only requires 1 kill, but it requires that you have killed 1 in the preceding action phase. This doesn't require that, but it requires 2 enemies to be out of action, which is kind of the same difficulty, I guess. So I think 2 glory for this is perfectly fine, and it's fairly doable for many of the Order warbands. I think the perfect contenders for these for this objective is Majoris. I can see Storm of Celestus pulling this off. Starblood Stalkers for sure, and Thundrix definitely. I mean, more of them could. Tharis could for sure do it. Morgwith's Skates as well. Elathine I probably wouldn't take this objective with. They generally don't want all objectives, and they also generally want to go forward, which kind of makes holding objectives slightly harder. So yeah, but several of them can reliably pull this off. So I'm gonna give this a B. It's not the strongest of the bunch, but it's certainly a solid objective. Alright, next one is Elimination Order. Search and Hybrid. Score this immediately after a friendly assassin's attack action that takes the target out of action, or a friendly fighter's attack action that takes an enemy leader out of action if no other fighters are out of action. Okay. Well, there aren't many cards that mention assassin as we speak, so I'm just gonna judge it by the current meta, so yeah, that's not reliable enough, I guess. Okay, the second condition, a friendly fighter attack action that takes an enemy leader out of action, and you can only score it if no other enemy fighters are out of action, so that's very specific. I think this card's focus is way too narrow to play, so I would not play this. It's not, as the meta stands now, I think this is fairly horrible. I'm gonna give it an E. Alright, last of the objective for order is True Grit. Score this in an end phase if your leader has 2 more wound counters. Okay, so it's banking on that your leader is alive and also banking on that he's wounded at least 2. I don't like this for 2 reasons. First of all, order doesn't have any big brutes like Mollog or Rothgorn or Kanan. And secondly, you can't control it very well. Can't really control how damaged your leader will be. So, and the fact that you actually want him to be injured is also pretty strange. So I'm tempted at giving it an E, but I might be kind and give it the D just because it will happen sometimes. So yeah, let's be kind and give it a D. Alright, okay, we move over to the upgrades, starting off with Perfect Stance. This fighter cannot be given stagger tokens when this fighter is the target of a range 1 or range 2 attack action. This fighter is considered to have 1 additional supporting fighter. Okay, I don't think the first part is that major at the moment, because, I mean, stagger is something that exists, but it's not super prevalent. So I'm just gonna judge it by the second part. So considered to be 1 additional supporting fighter when the target range 1, 2. So that's pretty strong when you are standing in gloom. Range 1 and range 2 attacks are the ones being really dangerous in the game. Yeah, you can certainly do a lot of damage with range attacks if you have Glory Seeker and Vice Frosty. Range 1 and 2 will be the major factors of damage dealing in the game. So if you are a shielded fighter standing on gloom, it's only dodges that doesn't work. So I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, 1 extra supporting fighter is good. I don't think it's quite worthy of a B. I'll give it a C. Alright, next up is Drill Sergeant. If this fighter has no move or charge token, friendly fighters that begin a move action adjacent to this fighter have +1 move for the duration of that action. And friendly fighters that begin an attack action adjacent to this fighter have +1 dice for the duration of that action. This is a bit situational, I think. Does not seem very strong. I guess you could use it to boost speed for really slow warbands, but there must be better ways to do that than this very situational card. I'm not gonna go any further into analyzing this card. It just seems very weak and situational. This is a clear E for me, if I'm not failing to see why this is a great card, but I guess I'm fine with that. Okay, last of the objectives for order is Castellan. It's an upgrade with which you can do an action to give 1 guard token to each friendly fighter within 2 axes. So realistically you can guard 2 or 3 fighters, so I guess Majoris could use this to score Patience of the Mountains a bit quicker. So it's a good double down on the ploy that gives guard to each friendly fighter within a certain amount of hexes if you waste the Aether Quartz. So yeah, possibly I could take it in the Majoris build, but otherwise I would probably not waste a upgrade slot on this one. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a D because it's not horrible, but it's certainly not great. Alright. First of the ploys are Courser's Maneuver, and it has the maneuver keyword, which at the moment doesn't really mean anything. It's a reaction. Play this after friendly fighter's move action. Choose another friendly fighter that is a hunter or is on guard. That fighter makes a move action. After that move action, the 2 fighter must be adjacent. So realistically, you won't play this unless you have a team with a lot of hunters. So the 2 eligible teams for this is Scathes or Elathanes or Starblood Stalkers, so actually 3 teams. I think Elathane is great because they can actually do 2 moves in a round, so getting a move token on a fighter without actually charging is not a major downside for them. So I think it's a great card for Elathanes, but also a very good card for Scathes. Once they're inspired, at least you want to charge in the first round, so getting a move token isn't great for them in the first round. I probably still can see them playing it in the first round. They actually have a card that removes move tokens as well, so it has good synergy with that. And the Starblood Stalkers, yeah, for sure they can use it. Lots of hunters there. Yeah, I think it's a good card. I mean, Blindside is an old favorite, and this is very similar to that one. So this is for the specific teams. This is a B, borderline A. Borderline A. I think for Elathane, this is an A. For the other 2 teams I mentioned, probably B. Alright, next up is Drilled Determination. Heal 1 each friendly fighter that is adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters, and or has 1 or more guard tokens. So realistically that won't be a lot of fighters at any given point, and heal 1 isn't that strong. I was going to be kind and give it a C, but I don't think it's quite worthy of that. I'll give it a D. Alright, wrapping up the last of the order cards, and actually last of all the cards in this review of the Grand Alliance cards, is a Gambit spell, Arcane Bulwark. It requires 1 focus, or 1 swirl if you will, to cast, and if you do, you can give 1 guard token to each friendly fighter within 2 axes of the caster. And of course that includes the caster himself, just like the guard tokens from Castellan, which I reviewed earlier. But this is similar, so something you can take for Majoris to score that objective I mentioned, Patience on the Mountain. And I would much more prefer to take this one over the upgrade. So yeah, it's a fairly easy spell to cast. And yeah, you can potentially give guard tokens to several fighters. So I think this is a fairly decent spell. I'm on the verge of giving it a B from a spell perspective. Yeah, let's be kind in this last card review and give it a B. Alright. Thank you for listening to my ramblings, and next time I'll review all the universal cards. But for now I'll take a break and hit the sack. You have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you soon.